Hopefully we gave you your just rewards for that victory. I don't remember, but thanks for sharing that part of the story. I didn't know that half. It's good. And I also worked with Congressman Balderson when he served in the legislature, and we worked together on a number of pieces of pro-business legislation. But what I remember most about Troy was our first ever encounter, which took place at an Ohio Chamber member company way back in 2007, before he ever served in public office. And he was a small business owner at the time for whom politics was brand new. I think it was his first run for office. And I know that despite him being successful in 2008 and having been an elected official ever since then, I think he's still the same friendly, down-to-earth guy he was when I first met him back in 2007. So glad to see you again as well, Congressman. And you all, and all of us in Westerville and Central Ohio are blessed to have the two of them representing all of us in Washington. So I'm just the moderator. My job is basically to ask the questions that you all, the members of the Westerville Chamber, have already submitted. And I was given, as Courtney mentioned, a few questions that were submitted in advance, and I'm going to start with these. And also try to work in some other questions that get asked during the presentation here today if we have time. So here's the first question. About 23,000 Ohio businesses received loans through the Paycheck Protection Program. Most of those loans were for $150,000 or less. And the borrowers are eligible for loan forgiveness if the funds were used for the eligible costs under the bill. However, I know from talking with our members, the loan forgiveness process itself can be quite cumbersome. So the question today is, would you support blanket PPP loan forgiveness below a certain threshold? Congressman Balderson, Congresswoman Beatty, I don't know who wants to go first. That's the question.
Do you want to go or you want me to go?
Go ahead, Joyce. Ladies first. Thank you.
Well, let me just say this. First of all, I want to thank the Westerville Chamber and certainly to everyone there for being on this call, whether you're virtual or whether you're sitting home or in your office. And Keith, thank you. We certainly know that we've been experiencing a lot as it relates to that. And I took a lead role serving on the Financial Services Committee and working with the chairman of the Small Business Committee to be one of the first to go to the House floor and talk about our small businesses and the issues that they were having, because small businesses, female-owned businesses, and minority-owned businesses took the brunt of that. And we know that it's been challenging for every small business around the country. So I would support making the forgiveness process as easy as possible. Absolutely. Whether that may be a simple one-page application or some form or mechanism, I would want it to be unburdened for small business. You see, prior to coming to Congress, I was a small business owner for some 20 years. And in general, I don't like to place arbitrary numbers into law. So I can't commit whether, it should be 50,000, 100,000, but I think it makes sense to make the process as easy as possible with, so you don't get people doing fraudulent things and that. So I think we have to have some accountability. But I have signed on to letters to the Treasury Secretary and signed on to legislation to force the Treasury to simplify the unnecessary, complicated process that's in place now. And so we have seen the Treasury issue new forms to try to make it simple, but I think we should all weigh in. So whomever put that question together, you're right on target. I know how difficult it has been. My son is a small business owner. I come from a family of small business owners, and it was a complicated process that did not have to be.
Hey, Keith, thank you. And Keith, great to see you. And I was pretty excited when I saw that you were going to be our moderator today. Janet, Courtney, thank you for organizing this. As Joyce said, just so you all know, Joyce and I were on a flight this morning at 6:22 a.m. this morning to fly over here to DC. So But you all also need to know, and Keith, and maybe you weren't aware of it yet, but to all of you there, Joyce received a very high honor over this past week, and it's really a big deal. And she's going to be the Congressional Black Caucus leader for the next 2 years, and I want to make sure that we text and we talk and whatnot, but the community needs to know that Joyce is in a pretty big leadership role. So we're all really happy and excited for Joyce being from the Ohio delegation to receive that. On the PPP, I sit on the Small Business Committee. So this is something, it's been an honor to sit on the Small Business Committee. This is a committee that's not near as active as it has been, for this year. Not a reason to be excited about for what's happening, but to be part of that conversation, and I excuse the buzzing, that is House is in session, so I apologize. 69% of the loans, the PPP that were out there, were under the $50,000 threshold. But the other issue that also comes up is, the tax deduction piece, and this is something I'm also advocating for to get out there, because to me, this whole PPP has been something that, small business owners have taken this challenge on to keep their employers off the unemployment line, and to making sure that the government does not have to pay unemployment compensation. So, the small business owner was taxed with this issue, so they received the money so they could keep them off the unemployment line. And I think, that needs to be looked at and addressed. It's not something that a small business owner went out and was going to go get. I mean, they were trying to help the government. They were helping their employee deal with what we were dealt with during this pandemic. And as I've gone out and, we've been out visiting businesses for the last 5 months, once we were able to go back out again, and taking the SBA with us and talking about that, and just to hear the stories of small business people out there that, help their employers. And another thing that I don't think that gets talked about, whether they paid their rent for them to make sure that they were okay, because, employers want to make sure they take care of their employees, and they know that they're a valuable asset to them. So we're going to continue working on those things, and that's part of the conversation with the next PPP that we have. But as Joyce said, there's several letters out there right now that we have also the Ohio delegation has signed on to, for the most part, all of us have signed on to those letters dealing with Treasury and making sure that, this is fair to small business owners who've been under great burden.
Great, thanks, Troy, and appreciate that, and for reminding me of that important news about Congresswoman Beatty. We did see that news last week, and that's certainly exciting, and I offer my congratulations as well. Thank you, Troy, and thank you both for that. So your comments kind of both lead into the next question, which is a little bit more broadly, and maybe we should assume the answer is positive, given that you're on a 6:22 a.m. flight out of Columbus this morning. But do you believe there will be a break in the partisan gridlock, and that Congress will pass more pandemic relief for small businesses and families before the end of the year, or maybe even sooner than that? And if you do you think it's going to contain more PPP funding? How about Congressman Balderson? You go first this time.
Thanks, Keith. Yes, I do. I'm pretty confident that we're going to come together and get something done. There's been a lot of things going on behind the scenes that a lot of people don't hear about, that we've been working on to get a next package. There's actually a bipartisan package out there right now with $908 billion out there that I know that the Republican Ohio delegation was going back and forth on Saturday, making sure that there weren't any questions, and we're going to get a letter to our leadership here within the next 48 hours addressing that, saying that we support that, and we want to see that go to the floor. The PPP, the Paycheck Protection Plan, has $136 billion in it right now. I mean, we can hit a button and get that flowing again. And what folks don't know, there's a lot of people, small businesses, that did not take the first tranche of opportunity to do this because we were dealing with a pandemic and they weren't real sure what we're going to be into and what they were going to be dealing with. So they didn't apply for it that first time. So they want to apply for it now for this first time but also dealing with, small businesses that are going to go back for the second time. And we know that's needed out there as we go out in the district and travel and meet with those folks. They want to do another round of PPP. So I feel pretty confident that we're going to get something done, and whether it's this week, next week, but I think the urgency is definitely there, and it's been there. And, this is something that we've been advocating now for over 5 months, probably, that, we've been wanting to get something done with COVID relief.
Are you equally confident, Congresswoman Beatty?
I am confident because we have many members who work together and put ideas together, but certainly we're not in the ideal situation. We have not been in the 116th Congress. And I think as we see the country shifting, as we see leadership shifting, it makes a difference. I think absolutely we should not, I'm going to even be stronger. We should not go home as members of Congress unless we come together. People are hurting. Too many people are losing their jobs, their small businesses, and smaller businesses are closing down now and saying they'll never be able to reopen. I've been very active with the PPP. I even introduced legislation on it. Out of that $908 billion that was mentioned, $288 billion of those dollars are for small businesses. So I think we will, hopefully before Friday or before we go home, there will be a bill that will pass the House floor, which means it will be bipartisan. Because I think the people who serve on the Small Business Committee, like Troy, they see it firsthand and right up front. We hear from experts and we hear from those business owners about how important it is for us to, pass more legislation. I think we have to figure out where all of the dollars are going to go. I would like to see it even greater. Not only would I like to see us giving the money for the small businesses, there are individuals that need relief. And we're still struggling with that and putting those dollars in there. State and local government is in there, and that's a good thing. Education is in there. And that all ties into monies for small businesses because it's important for our children and families to also be taken care of. And that relieves some of the stress that's put on the small businesses. We have an obligation, and you will hear me say this in Congress, we have an obligation to come together. This is bigger than Democrats and Republicans, and it's something we should not be divided on. Now, much of what we have been debating over the last 9 months or before has been what goes into the package. We were able to reduce the dollar amounts. All of you all know we weren't talking about billions of dollars. We were talking about trillions of dollars is the need. And so we came down from our amount to $2 trillion. We were hoping that the Republicans would come up from their 1 trillion to 2, and we could meet each other somewhere in between. And then it was, where do those dollars go? How many dollars are going to be in each category? So yes, we're making progress. I personally don't think it's enough. We heard Janet Yellen say, you're either going to pay on this end or you're going to pay on the other end. And she believes that we have enough monies for us to go ahead and allocate the dollars now, which means small businesses would be getting their share of the dollars. Because if we don't, we're going to pay for it later. It's going to affect the economy. And with that, it affects the lives of individuals. So that's how strongly I feel about that. And Troy, let me just say thank you for making that announcement. I really appreciate that. He also called me over the weekend, and Troy did better than I did. He's in his office. I haven't made it to the Hill yet. I barely made it to my condo to get presentable for you today. So thanks, Troy.
Always, Joyce. Thank you.
Well, that sounds like good news then, if we might have something by the end of the week. Do you think that package will include, with respect to PPP loans, allowing 501c6 organizations like the Westerville Chamber to have access to those loan dollars?
This package, Keith, I never know how to do these Zoom calls, and I want to be respectful. I'm still the sophomore here with Congresswoman Beatty. In this initial $908 billion package, that is not in there. That conversation has come up, and it has been in some packages that have been put together. That's something that, we're both advocating for, and I'm going to, I know Stivert, I shouldn't speak on his behalf, but I know in conversations with them, this is something that, we're communicating with. And Janet knows that I have a bulldog of a hometown chamberman by the name of Dana Matz. And so Dana's pushing on this issue every single day, just about, not quite. But anyway, so, if it's not in this package, it will come at some point, someday, and we'll continue to work. I shouldn't say it will. We're going to continue to work on, getting that to be part of the package.
Great.
I would only add, I think it's going to be difficult, and certainly Troy and I and Congressman Stivers and others on both sides of the aisle, we hear you. We've been pushing for it. We're on the record. Maybe it would be nice if Senator McConnell would give us more dollars so we could have more dollars to put in, so we would have more dollars to give out. But I've signed on to letters requesting it. We've talked with our colleagues about it. So we're supporting it. But I think it's going to be a heavy lift from where we are right now.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I appreciate the candor. Similarly, another item that's been in some of the previous proposals and not in all of them, and it seems to be contentious, and it's something that's been done here at the state level by our General Assembly, which is to give businesses like the members of the Westville Chamber immunity from COVID-related lawsuits, which is particularly of interest, with respect to allowing or getting employers back to open fully and having confidence that their actions are sufficient. What do you think the status of that is? Do you support that being part of a package, granting employers immunity from lawsuits at the federal level? Congresswoman? We
have had a lot of dialogue about that. And certainly if a small business is taking reasonable precautions, I think the line is fine. I would say yes, because we know there could be some people who might have frivolous lawsuits, but we can't give them the right just to be reckless. It's a delicate balance. And I think here is something that you almost have to not take cases in isolation, or you have to look at each case and determine where we are with it. I think it would be something that many of the small business owners certainly want, and certainly something that I could get behind once we looked at all the details and what the parameters were with that.
Thank you. Troy?
Yeah, thanks, Keith. Yeah, this has been a top priority for me. I fully support it. I know that, Leader McConnell this has been his #1 priority for the next COVID package that we do. It appears we do have, it has made it into this bipartisan package that we have right now. But yeah, it's something that I fully support. It's everywhere I go, and in businesses, as I told you beforehand, as I've been going out and about the last 5 months, that's one of their top 3 issues also. You have schools also bringing that into that conversation now, and I think that's important that kind of gets left out. So fully support, will be behind, and I think it needs to be one of the top priorities.
Great. Good luck trying to get that done. So the next couple of questions kind of take us away from COVID and more to other areas. So about a month ago or so, I think it was, the U.S. Supreme Court heard the latest legal challenge to the Affordable Care Act. And it sounds like folks that were watching the body language of justices and so forth, that law is likely to be upheld. And the ACA at this point is more than a decade old. So my question for the two of you is this something you're still hearing about from your constituents about the Affordable Care Act and more broadly about healthcare in general or health insurance? Still expensive, still a big cost for employers that are trying to provide that coverage to their employees. If the fate of the Affordable Care Act is more or less settled at this point in time, what's next for healthcare reform? Congresswoman Beatty?
Well, let me just say the ACA it never has gone away. It is the law of the land. And I can't believe that anyone would think that we did not need health care. And it's what we have, especially now with this pandemic. I mean, if you're watching the news and you see where our hospitals are, where you see the number of people who are contracting it, dying right here in the great state of Ohio, each day our numbers escalate. The governor, thank goodness, has taken us to a state of being more cautious, asking us to mask up and wear masks because people are dying and people are going to the hospitals and they need health care. Think about if you lost your job, which we know many are. And think about then what happens if you get COVID, unemployed, COVID. If you don't have any insurance, would this be considered a pre-existing condition? I think you have to look at that, which thank goodness. Look at the number of college kids who have been seriously ill and confined into hospitals because of COVID. Thank goodness that we voted to keep a student on their parents' insurance up to the age of 26. I think it is unthinkable during this COVID-19 for anyone to say that we don't need to have the Affordable Care Act. Now, with that said, we know there will be improvements, and I'm on the record saying that we need to build on it, but there is no way in the light of the number of people who are dying, in the light of COVID, would I be able to say that we don't need it. I mean, I voted 70 some times for it when my colleagues was trying to do away with it, when this administration didn't have a plan to replace it. Now, I'm a very open person. If you tell me this is bad and it's not working, my mother used to always say, don't complain without a full resolve. So there was no plan to substitute it. Now, it's not perfect. There are some issues with it, but I have constituents calling me all the time about healthcare insurance. What if I get COVID? When we were first giving the test, before people recognized they could get it for free, people were saying, oh my God, will my insurance cover this? Or if I don't have insurance and I get COVID, how will I be treated? All the symptoms that you get that you're rushed to the hospital. You know what happens if you've ever been in the hospital, in that emergency room, what's the first thing they ask you for? Who's your insurance? Where's your insurance card? They won't even let you get back beyond the front desk without giving them that information. And I can tell you, I masked up and put on garb and went over to watch those people going in to see if I could help. And the people were lined up at the hospitals trying to get in. And all we heard about was insurance, and what will happen to me when my company closes and my insurance goes away.
Congressman Balderson?
Thanks, Keith. Yeah, the ACA has been here for over a decade now, and as you do go out in the district, you hear bits and pieces of concerns that are out there. And look, it needs some fixes, and I'm ready to do that. I'm ready to look at some different options that are out there. I mean, we have the health savings accounts, we have the flexible spending accounts. We have the associated health plans. I mean, there's a lot that we can do to incorporate the need for healthcare. And I had a conversation this morning about COBRA and the gap that's there for COBRA and the expense for that. Joyce brought up about folks losing their jobs, but even pre-COVID, there was that situation I think that we should really start working on too. Obviously, the drug pricing piece, that gets brought up probably more than even the ACA does as I go out and about in the district. But, let's continue to work on it. And look, we're going to have to make some really tough decisions. And they're going to have to be done in a bipartisan way. As you said, Keith, I always go back to, Senator Tom Niehaus, who was my president of the Senate, and Eric Kearney was the leader of the Democrats in the Senate. Ernie was a great guy. Mr. Kearney was a great guy. Eric was a great guy. But we were doing legislation for the retirement plans. And it was like, look, President Niehaus said, we're going to sit down as Republicans and Democrats, and we're going to fix this. And you're not going to be running TV commercials against each other the whole time. Once we do this fix and may come up to some agreements. So that's the courage it's going to take, because, for me, having abundance of, someone saying, well, the TV says you're not going to, be for covering pre-existing condition. Okay, the population of Ohio is 11 million people. About 8 million people have pre-existing conditions. Now, who in their right mind would not support covering pre-existing conditions? We all have someone that is affected by pre-existing conditions. So again, it's time to sit down and have the real hard discussion. Quit worrying about, who's going to run that commercial against you. I think the Wall Street had a great editorial probably a month and a half ago, and it talked about this. But it talked about the courage that it's going to take by this Congress to sit down and put our issues aside and come to agreement that we can incorporate some of the things that I talked about too, whether it's health savings account and associated health plans as we move forward. And as Joyce said, we have a new administration coming in. So I think now's a great opportunity for everyone to come to the table.
Keith, let me add to that, because this is going to be a battle. And I think that's what diplomatically Troy is saying, that we do need to come together and we need to figure this out, because you have individuals who want Medicare for all. You have individuals who are referencing, like Troy, COBRA and what's going to happen with the different plans. But, we also have people who are marginalized, who COBRA doesn't mean anything to them because they wouldn't be able to afford to continue it or to keep it. We have to look at African Americans make up 13% of the nation's population, and very similarly here in Ohio. But when you look at healthcare, how disproportionately women and minorities are affected, we can no longer only be talking in the level and talking about it for the top 3% or 10%. There are people down that are marginalized. There are people who, because of the disparities, and we can use COVID because that's our number one thing right now that we have to deal with in the healthcare space. So when you look at right here in Ohio, 13% of the population are folks who look like me or other minorities, and yet we're contracting the virus at almost 20% and dying at an almost equal rate. And so when I look at that and we talk about healthcare and we want to talk about it in the space of politics or a commercial, I think we have to move beyond that because people are dying. And the only way to keep people alive is to make sure that everyone has insurance coverage. And also with that, we have to look at the cost factors, and we should be reducing that also. We know that there are many people ill. If we talk outside of COVID, let's take diabetes, for example. When we look at that and we look at the cost of insulin here, I mean, it's highway robbery what we're doing. So we do have to get a grasp on the whole medical plan, including prescription costs.
Thank you both for that. And yeah, what you just pointed out, Congresswoman Beatty, is virtually every topic and every subject from a public policy perspective has been accentuated or changed or brought even more to the forefront as a result of COVID. And healthcare is a perfect example of that. One of the other examples of that, and as it leads into the next question here, is before COVID, we actually were we had a lot of workforce challenges. The employer community had a lot of workforce challenges and had difficulty filling lots of positions. So this question here, and maybe I'll let Troy go first this time around, looks like it comes from a manufacturer. And the question is, we have nearly a 95% no-show rate for interviews for production positions. And the person that submitted this question says he knows he's not alone, so it can't necessarily be their own process because they're not alone in this. And the assumption is that some of those applicants are just fulfilling their unemployment requirements by scheduling the interviews. Do you know, and this, you know, I know the unemployment system is sort of a joint state federal program. Has there ever been talk about a system where employers can verify the interview attendance and whether or not a job offer was made, so that, because it's frustrating for employers to be able to have to try to fill this position, have folks come in for interviews who really have no desire to actually take the job if it were to be offered to them?
Yeah, Keith, no, I mean, hey, maybe we ought to make get something drafted to do that, where we start doing that, because the manufacturing facility that you're talking about is right on. I mean, he's right, 95, or she is right, 95% of the employers that are out there, that they don't show up when they're there for the interview. And it is amazing as you go back and you look at pre-COVID. I mean, a year ago from December, we had the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years. There were more jobs than there were people to fill those jobs. And this is something that I've been passionate about for a long time. And I know we get into the trade issues a lot. We talk about that, emphasize that a lot, and the need that's out there. And what I would also like to see done is some of the educational things that we do a little bit differently, going back maybe. I know we don't like to go back in time, but I think most of the people I don't see everybody that's on here, but everyone knows my passion for vocational education. And it is truly unbelievable, the importance and what that means for people. And, as I go around the district and, you meet with some of these kids, and, for them just to have that door open and know that this opportunity is out there is huge for them to be able to do that, because not every person is going to go get a 4-year degree. It's just not in their DNA, and that's okay. So, and instead of, putting a negative on that for not going to get a 4-year degree, turn that around on the, young adults or young kids, and to say, look, here's another path that you can go. And so many employers will say to me, this is Troy, you get a body in my door, I will train them. I will do what's necessary to get it done. So I can employ them because I need them. And even as you travel the district right now, I mean, there's a lot of hiring signs out there. People are hiring now. And I still have constituents that reach out to me and say, Troy, are you aware of anybody looking for this position or that position? And I think, I'll use Rick Platt for an example down in Newark. Rick runs the Licking County Port Authority. He is also on the Jobs Ohio board. But, during the first couple months of COVID, when people were shut down and people weren't working, what better opportunity? His organization contributed money to COTC so people could get recertified in another field. I mean, there are things that are out there, and maybe, we need to convey that message more and put that out there to what's going on. But employers are involved, and they'll do whatever they need to do to get people to work, because, the more people they have, the more production they have. So it's a win-win. If you have an HVAC system person and you can only make a half dozen service calls a day, you can get 2 more reps on board with you, you can make 10 calls a day. So, it's only going to increase for everybody. And the job market is there. The funds are there. And the more people working, the better off this economy in this country and this state's going to be.
Well, let me just add to that, because certainly whether it's manufacturing and people not showing up for interviews, or those employers having a hard time to get employees, we know now during COVID, people are afraid to be in large places of employment. and not going. But when you said pre-COVID, I think we also have to look at many of the circumstances. We do need better training, and everyone is not going to go to college. And so that's why we need workforce development and we need job training. We've been very successful in my district through partnerships with the Columbus Urban League, providing training. Also, we look at those in the labor movement. They were having a hard time. There were plenty of jobs, but they could not get workers to come out and do the heavy lifting jobs, or people could not pass the drug test, or people could not get certified to the level. So I think we have a lot of work to do. And I think COVID is going to force us there sooner than pre-COVID, because there are so many businesses where individuals who didn't require a professional degree were working that aren't going to be opening back up. I mean, if you look at movie theaters and restaurants and other type of recreational places that may not have required academic credentials, but required maybe some type of a certification, those individuals are going to have a hard time. You have to have retooling and retraining. So those are dollars that I would like to see put. Just as important as having PPP dollars, you have, what about that business owner that loses his or her business? It would be nice if there were dollars they could apply for certifications and testing, because their business is going to close in the next 6 months or so and they won't be able to recoup. So I think we have a lot of work to do, and especially for those small business, those manufacturing, those who are in the construction and the trades. That used to be plentiful. Now I have trade associations folks calling me all day long saying, how can we get more people into trades?
I think you're both exactly right. I mean, this is just one more area, as I said in my preface to the question, that COVID has accentuated and aggravated a problem that was already the case. But we're gonna be dealing with it once we finally get through this on the other side. The last question that has been submitted so far, and so if anyone has any more, now's the time to get them in, is a little bit more about the two of you and your individual objectives and priorities in the House. The House majority that the Democrats have is going to be the narrowest majority that any party has seen in recent memory. So how will that impact each of your abilities to be productive as an individual lawmaker? Congresswoman?
I don't look at numbers in relationship to the work I have to do. I feel really good about where I am, where the 3rd Congressional District is, and the direction that the nation will go in to build back better. I also think that if you are fighting for the people, which is my #1 job, to make sure that there is legislation that improves the lives of our families and our communities. Now, is it better when you have the majority? Sure, we would both say that. And even better if there is a larger margin. Now, it's going to force a lot of things. COVID is going to make a lot of changes. And I think that we're going to go from agony to action. There are going to be a lot of difficult days ahead of us, in part because we're starting over with a new administration. From where I sit, it will be great to have people who match, whose experience and knowledge match the work that they're doing. People who understand it and they're not there because they could buy their way there and have no experience. I mean, when we look at just the history of what's happened in the last 4 years and the number of changes and turnover and the number of people who were indicted or who went to jail. So we have to start with a clean slate, but we have to put people first. If we're talking about education, we have to have real educators in there at all levels, you know, for those who are in public schools, those who choose to be taught at home or anywhere else. We also have to look at the economy. And I am extremely excited as we move forward. And I see for the first time in a long time, there are a lot of women on the screens here. So Janet and Courtney, a job well done. I could not be more excited about the diversity, and not just race and ethnicity, that Joe Biden, president-elect, but to have a vice president that's a female, a Black woman, and a woman of color is amazing for me. I'm so excited that how we communicate to this nation will be led by all women, some of the most diverse backgrounds that you've ever seen, and each one of them stellar in their rights. We've talked a lot about jobs and the economy and PPP. When you look at how the Secretary of Treasury and that office and economic team will be moving forward. You have Janet Yellen coming from her past experience at the Federal Reserve and now being the Secretary of Treasury. She's brilliant and just happens to be a female. And that team, all women. So I think we're going to see a lot of differences and changes. I feel good about it. I will continue to do whatever I have to do that's best in the interest of my constituents. And I've said it before, you know, I believe in transparency and accountability and civility. I believe you can disagree without being disagreeable. It doesn't mean that I'm going to agree with everything my colleagues say or they're going to agree with me, but I won't let that small margin get in the way of me speaking truth to power and standing up for small business owners and people, because we have a lot of work to do. And it's going to be tough. There'll be a lot of long nights that Troy and I will have, and we'll be on that 6 o'clock plane a lot. I can tell you that looking at some of the cabinet members in the White House, I think I have a little edge. Cedric Richmond, one of my dearest and best friends, having the ear of soon-to-be President Biden. I have a lot of friends over there in my new role as chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. For those who don't know, we're the largest caucus in the Congress. We represent some 82 million Americans, and we represent 41% of the United States Black population with 17 million people. So we're coming with a lot of power, a lot of strength. And so hopefully that will be helpful.
And I know you're not a shrinking violet, Congresswoman. So, Troy, how about from your perspective?
You know, we're going to continue in the next Congress working on the things that are important in this district, and obviously jobs are you know, the top priority, making sure that we get this economy going again. Rural broadband is something that's been a priority of mine, even in the state legislature. You know, some things, and we talk about all the negative with COVID, and obviously there's a lot there, but I mean, I like to look at some of the positive that have come from COVID, and you know, because it kind of gives you an opportunity to clean some things up a little bit. And one of those things is telehealth. Telehealth medicine has grown astronomically in the last year, and you know, having worked with Nationwide Children's Hospital, but also the rural hospitals that are in our congressional district. But Cindy Axney, Cindy is from Iowa. Cindy is a great partner. I mean, when I look to work with someone, you know, and as Joyce said, you know, and Joyce and Steve and I from this, you know, Central Ohio delegation have a bipartisan working relationship. We're friends. You know, we don't have to agree on everything all the time, but we know, you know, we can move the needle a little bit and try to get that, you know, another direction. But, you know, when I look for members of Congress to work with, that's what I do. I look to see where they represent, their history. I don't look at whether they're Democrat or Republican. Yes, the Democrats are in the majority, you know, and, you know, I'm going to work with Democrats. I have to, because I have to get results for the 12th Congressional District. And that's my top priority is to get those results to do that. I mean, Angie Craig and I, Angie's from Minnesota. She's on the Small Business Committee with me. I mean, our bill was signed into law by the president on July 4th, actually, to extend the PPP to August 8th. So, you know, working in those partnerships are important, and we'll continue to do that moving forward with the 12th Congressional District, because if I don't have anything to show for, you know, I'm not doing my job, and trust me, I'm not going to let that happen. And I'm very fortunate. You are aware, I mean, we have a great staff, and I'm proud of our staff. And Terry Geiger's our chief of staff. Laura Inquist is our deputy chief here at the DC office. But the district director is David Cordonier. And just, you know, I can't give them all a shout out, but they're all great. They work hard. They know what I want and what I expect. And that's what we're going to continue to do moving forward.
Well, I don't see any more questions in the chat box, so I think we'll wrap it up with the two of you, and greatly appreciate it on behalf of the Westville Chamber. I'd like to thank you all. The business community in Westerville, I know, has, and we've seen it today, has two powerful representatives working on their behalf, looking out for their interests, and they're lucky in that respect. I know this job is not an easy one, these 6:22 a.m. flights on a Monday morning, and you know, just the constant back and forth from Washington back to Ohio. And I know that when you represent a district that has, what, 650,000 people in there, whatever the number is, maybe bigger than that, you know, that's tough to be the voice of that many people. Particularly in these difficult times with COVID, and these times when, frankly, our nation's polarized and divided in many respects. So good luck to the both of you. And again, on behalf of the members, thank you. And I will turn it over now to Ashley, as the chair of the board of the Westville Chamber. And thank you, Janet, and for allowing me the opportunity to moderate this discussion today.
Great. Well, thanks so much. Thank you, Congresswoman Beatty and Congresswoman Balderson. So great to have you guys with us. And Keith, we're so pleased that you could be with us this year as well. It's so great these days. It's hard to, you know, turn on TV or watch a program like this and be able to see two different perspectives with such civility. And I really appreciate you guys coming on board. It's one of the things that I look forward to every year. And Congresswoman, congratulations again on your new role with chairing the Congressional Black Caucus. It speaks so well to you, but it also is a great privilege for all of us in Central Ohio. So thank you and congratulations. Just want to take a quick second and remind you of our sponsors and thank them again for their support. Civista Bank for being our speaker sponsor, and also our Platinum Involved member sponsor to Ohio Business Services. Nationwide Children's was our silver sponsor, and the bronze sponsor was Charter Communications Spectrum. Jeff, Haley, Dennis, congratulations and thanks again for all of your time, contributions that you've given to the Chamber. You've impacted us in so many ways. We're so thankful for your efforts, and congratulations on your awards that you won today. And lastly, I'd just like that if everybody could provide us your input about the meeting, any suggestions that you might have for future speakers or topics. That's what we're here for. Later on this afternoon, you should be receiving a survey in the mail about today's program. So if you could just take a second and give us some feedback on that, we appreciate it. Otherwise, I wish you all a very safe and healthy holiday season, and we will see you soon. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Janet. Thanks, everybody.
Yep.
Thank you.